everybody, I'm Lizzie Jones and I'm your host for this week's Paper Tray Ink Make It Monday. This week we're going to be talking about edge stenciling and how to get a lot of impact from just a subtle detail around the edges to draw your eye in and really make your focal point pop. So I hope you'll join me. Come on. Okay, so I'm starting with a panel of cardstock. This one is 4.5 by 5 and 3/4. I made it a little larger than the standard size of a card front because I'm going to trim down the edges to remove any harsh, you get the harsh edges sometimes with blending. So I'm going to trim those off, which is why it's a little bigger. And I'm just putting down a base foundation of Aqua Mist. I'm going to stencil over this, but it just gives a really nice sort of warmth to the, or dimension to the edges of the cardstock to have a little bit of color put down first. So now I've got the stencil in place. I've taped it to the back of my cardstock with washi tape. I think this is something I've seen other people do. I am not that clever to come up with this by myself. So again, you're just stenciling around the edges, and you don't need a lot to make a big impact. You really just need to make sure that you've got a little bit of texture throughout. So here it is after I've taken the stencil off, and you can see it's not super bold, but it does have just a nice depth, and it just sort of draws your eye in towards the center of that panel. Okay, so like I said, I wanted to trim off the edges, so I'm just going to trim about 1/8 of an inch off of each side to make sure there's no really harsh color anywhere. I want this to be really nice and soft, so I'm just taking those edges off one at a time. And this is the base of the layered banner die. I'm just tracing around it. The color is immaterial. I'm not going to use this later. I just want to have the outline for my stamping. So I'm just tracing lightly with a pencil. Okay, so I'm using the Sweet Life here. I have sped this up a good bit just so you're not watching me stamp for an hour because I'm kind of a slow stamper. But we're going to start with Sweet Blush for the first layer of the roses. And I apologize in advance. My head's going to get in the way because of the layering. I wanted to make sure I was fairly well lined up. So it will kind of get in the way, but hopefully you'll still be able to see what's happening. So layer number 2 we're going to do with Pale Peony here. I really like these two colors layered on top of each other. So this is just going to be another soft pink. Once it dries, they sort of blend together. It's really, really nice. So here we've got the set of 3 roses. They're getting their Pale Peony layer here as well. And there we go. So for the third layer on these roses, I'm using Berry Sorbet. And this is the one that's really hard for me to see, so I apologize. You're definitely going to see the top of my head. But I get it out of the way just in time. So there you go. There is the Berry Sorbet on the big rose. And I'm going to get the trio of roses here in just a second. And there we go. And now I'm going back in with prairie grass for my leaves. So the reason that I trace around that banner is so I can really have a good idea of where it's going to cover, so I can place my flowers and my leaves accordingly without having to go back and forth with a stamp positioner or have the actual die cut back and forth on my project. It's just a little bit cleaner and easier to trace around it with a pencil because once all these ink colors are dry, we can erase that and then it's like it was never there in the first place. So I'm going back in with Olive Twist for the details of my leaves. There we go. So it just adds a nice depth of monochromatic color there. And it's just a really quick step to go back in and just ink up these leaves a little bit. And these are going to, the dark green here is going to tie in to my sentiment, which I'll stamp here in just a minute. There we go. Here's the last leaf and my sentiment. So here is the top layer of this is Layered Banner Banter, and this is the top layer of the Layered Banner die, and I'm just stamping the script thanks using that same olive twist ink. So like I said, it'll just tie into those leaves and it all coordinates nicely that way. There we go. And I'm just going to adhere that to a Bitty Big Aqua Mist background piece that I die cut with the same die. Put a little foam tape on there, because foam tape. Okay, so I've got all of my pieces. This is a Sweet Blush card base I'll use in a second. And I'm just going to use an eraser to remove any residual pencil marks. And once the ink is dry, you don't really have to worry about it smudging or coming off or anything. So just a plain old white eraser takes care of that, no problem whatsoever. And like I said, this is a Sweet Blush card base, standard A2 card base. And I'm just going to adhere the rose panel to the card base with a little ATG adhesive. And there we go. So it's adhered down, and then I'm going to remove the backing on that foam tape and put the layered banner in place right there in the center in between all of those roses. Okay, so we've got the banner there situated nicely, and now I think the card needs a little something. So I pulled out some sequins. These are just clear sequins, and I'm going to adhere them with Mono Multi Matte, and I'm just going to use a few here just to sort of finish off the card and give it a little sparkle. So there you go. So here you can see the finished card, and you can see how that subtle shading is just bringing your eye in towards the flowers and in towards that sentiment, really adding a lot of depth. So my challenge to you is to use stencils or maybe a cover plate cut from vellum or Yupo paper if you don't have any stencils. Use something to create a unique decorative edge for your cards. It'll just bring the eye inward and really make your focal point pop. This has been Lizzie Jones for Paper Tray Ink. I hope you'll head over to our blog to link up your own project, and I'll see you soon. Have a great week, everybody.